Hey there, Frederick Douglass Elementary School. This is Mrs. Shoupard, and welcome to the first day of Sea Creature Week. I'm going to do two different videos this week that have to do with different sea creatures. And the first one is going to be an octopus. So today, as you can see in this picture, I'm going to show you how to paint an octopus. So we're going to be making a painting, but whenever I do a painting, I always like to draw what I'm going to be painting first. That way I kind of have a guide for where I'm going to put the paint. It gives me a better idea of like staying inside the lines and that kind of thing. If I was just gonna take a paintbrush and some paint and start painting the octopus, I might kind of lose track of where I want to put the paint. So that's why I kind of do like an outline with my pencil first. I'm gonna start up here kind of off to the side, but at the very top of my paper for the head of the octopus, and then all of the legs are going to spread out from there. And hopefully take up most of the paper. You don't want to have a teeny tiny octopus in the middle of your paper and then all this empty space around it. So try to make your octopus fairly large, almost as big as the piece of paper. The one thing that I find the most difficult about drawing an octopus is making sure you have enough room for all the legs, because they do have 8 legs and we have to make sure that we have enough room on our paper for all of them. So let's see how it goes. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to try to draw kind of lightly with my pencil, because eventually once you paint it, you don't really want your pencil lines to be showing. So when you are drawing for your painting, you want to draw lightly, almost like a sketch. A sketch is just pressing really lightly with your pencil, and sometimes the lines get a little messy because you're not actually drawing and pressing hard. You're just making short little lines to connect all together. So if you can't see the drawing of my pencil lines, you might have to pause the video and kind of take a closer look, because I'm going to be drawing really lightly. So the top of the octopus's head is going to be up here, and it's not a circle. It's kind of more like the shape of an oval, but the top of the head is almost like a circle here, and then you stop. So don't fill in the bottom part of the circle. What you're going to do on the sides is kind of make it look like a squid head, where they have it coming out on the sides. So we have those 2 bumps coming out from the bottom of our circle, and then it's gonna come back in and get a little bit kind of skinnier down here towards the bottom. So this would be kind of where, like, if it was a human head, this would be like the chin, but we're just gonna leave that open because now we need to work on connecting all of the legs. So the first leg that I'm gonna draw is gonna come straight out here, and it's gonna come up, because I don't want it to come straight out and I don't want it to come straight down, because then I'm not going to have enough room for all the rest of the legs. So I'm going to kind of be working on both sides of the head and then working my way in towards the middle, hopefully having enough room for all 8 legs. So this leg is going to come up and bend around. When you're drawing the octopus legs, they're going to be pointy at the end, so you're going to make almost like a little triangle down here, and they're going to be very skinny at the pointy part, and then they're going to get a little bit wider and a little bit wider as they get back towards the head. Okay, so see how this is the widest part right here of the leg, and it gets skinnier and then skinnier all the way to a point on the other side. All right, now let's do a leg over on this side. And you don't want them to be the exact same shape. So this one I had come up and point back down this way. This one's gonna be kind of longer and then curve down. It doesn't have like this bend in it, like this almost looks like an elbow right here. So this leg is not the same shape, and you don't want, actually you don't want any of your legs when you're octopus to be the same. Try to make all of them slightly different. Because when the octopus is swimming around in the ocean, he's moving all of these legs, but it's not like a human where you're just walk, 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 walk. All of his legs are kind of moving all independently, and so they're all gonna be a different shape when you draw them to make it look like he's swimming in the ocean and not just standing still like a human. All right, the next leg we're gonna draw is going to come up like this and bend and come all the way down to the bottom of my paper. And then I'm gonna have the little point here. It's gonna be skinny, get a little bit wider, get a little bit wider. And the widest part will be back here at the head. All right, so we have 3 legs. I'm going to try to do one over on this side, and it's going to go behind this one a little bit. So remember, when you're overlapping, you don't want to draw your lines over top of what you already drew. If you want this leg to look like it's going behind this leg, you're going to have a break in this line. So this line will come down and then stop, and it will continue here, and then this line will come up and then stop, and we'll continue on the other side to make it look like this leg is behind this leg. Okay, let's try another one. This one is going to come out and all the way over this way. And you can bend these legs, like when you're drawing them, they don't have to look exactly like mine. You can kind of draw like curved lines and wavy lines, however you want to. So your octopus legs can be however you want, as long as you wind up with 8. Okay, so how many we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have to have 6, 7, 8. We have to have 3 more in here. I think we're doing pretty good with the space. I like how my legs are kind of coming out all the way to the edge of the paper, and you know, making them long enough to make them look like real octopus legs. So let's see what we want to do for this one. We're gonna have this one come over here and then down. And we'll have this one that one might actually be going, well, we could probably fit it. I was gonna say maybe it was gonna go off the edge of the paper, but maybe we'll just have it like that. And then we just need one more, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, we just need one more right here, and we could have him come right out of the middle here, and maybe we have him curling around. Maybe we'll have it curl a little bit farther towards the bottom. Okay, so all my lines are on there, hopefully pretty lightly. I hope you can see them at least a little bit. What I would recommend is not going back and tracing over them. You want them to be light, and that we're just going to use them as a guide for our paint. And then if we feel like we need to trace over something at the end, we probably won't use the pencil. We'll probably either use a Sharpie or maybe some black paint if we feel like we need to trace over these lines at the end. The last thing I'm going to do with my pencil before I start painting is I'm just going to erase a few of these lines where all the legs are kind of coming together. Because we don't need all those extra lines here. We kind of want it to become up and then down, and then up and then down, and then up and then down. So I don't even need this line or this line. All the legs are connecting here, so we don't need the lines to kind of continue into this area. So I'm just gonna kind of clean it up a little bit with my eraser. And then I am going to draw the eyes. When I paint them, I'm gonna paint a few different circles, but I just wanna kind of get an idea of where the eyes are gonna be, so I can like kind of get an idea of where I wanna put the paint. So I'm just gonna put like 2 ovals right there so I save a space for the eyes, but that looks pretty good for the pencil portion. So I'm gonna go ahead and get my paint, and I'm gonna show you how to paint the octopus. Before you get started painting, what I want you to do is think of a color scheme. A color scheme is a few colors that go together that you're gonna kind of stick with for the whole painting, that you're not gonna use every single color that you can imagine, unless it's a project that you want to use like rainbow colors, so you can use all the colors in the rainbow. But I'm just gonna pick like 3 colors. So a color scheme is usually like 3 or 4 colors. So for my octopus, I'm gonna paint most of him red, and then he's going to have some spots, and those spots are going to be purple and yellow. So my color scheme is these 3 colors. So you can pick whatever color scheme you want for your octopus. And I'm gonna start with the red. Make sure you choose a brush that's not too big. This is a brush that I have that's just, it's too big, because when you try to get into all these little areas, it's gonna go outside of the line. So make sure you use a brush that's the appropriate size for your octopus so that you're not painting outside of the lines. For right now, all we need to do is take our red paint, and basically you're gonna be going around and tracing your pencil lines, and do the best you can to not go too far out of the lines, but you do kind of want to cover up the lines, because like I said, you don't really want to see your pencil lines when you're done painting. So you can go outside of the lines a little bit while you're painting over your pencil lines, but just make sure that it doesn't look like too messy. You still need to follow the same shape that you had from what you drew. So you're using your pencil lines as a guide, right? So I'm just kind of tracing over them, and then once I trace over them, then I can start filling in the rest of the area. The paint that I'm using is called acrylic paint, but you can use any kind of colors that you have. If you have watercolors at your house, or if you have tempera paint at your house, or if you just have like one of those little craft sets that come with like the little circles that are all connected in one long strip, that'll work too. For this octopus painting project, it actually doesn't really matter what kind of paint you use. So whatever you have is fine. And like I said, whatever color scheme you want to choose, that's also fine. If you want to try to make it look a little bit more realistic, you could go on to Google and search pictures of what real octopus look like, or real octopi, because octopi is plural for octopus. And you can search up what they look like in real life, and then you can kind of try to make yours look more realistic. I think for my octopus today, it's gonna kind of look more a little bit like a cartoon octopus. So however you want to do it, it's fine. I'm just gonna go ahead and fill in the rest of my octopus with the red paint. Now that I have the whole octopus painted in with my red paint, I'm gonna have to set him to the side to let him dry for a little while. The reason is, if I was gonna go ahead and paint on the spots right now, the yellow and the purple paint that I wanna use would smear with the red paint that's not dry yet. So I can't go ahead and paint on my spots yet because all the colors would start to blend together. Unless that's the technique that you want to go for. But I am hoping that the red will just stay as kind of like the background color of the octopus, and then I'll have the circles or the polka dots as a pattern on top of the red. So I'm gonna let the red paint dry for right now. The other thing is I can't use the colors that I want to use for my background yet, because I do want to kind of make it look like he's in the ocean. So I'm probably going to use like a little bit of blue for the water back here. But again, I'm not going to do that until the red paint is dry, just because I know my brush is going to be getting very close to the legs, if not touching the legs, when I'm painting the blue. And I don't want the red paint here that's still wet to blend in with the blue from the water. Because that's not gonna look good. It's just gonna look a little messy. So I'm just gonna set this to the side and let it dry, and then I'll come back and I'll show you how to do the rest of the painting. Okay, I think the red paint is mostly dry now, so I'm gonna go ahead and start painting on some of the smaller details. So I got a smaller brush just so I could paint some of the smaller details. What I'm gonna have to do is try to find which part of the leg is showing. So if this is the front of this leg, then this would get the polka dots. But for the pattern that's gonna be on his skin. And maybe this part down here is kind of like the underside of his leg. So if that's the case, then they would have those little tiny suction cups. So I'm gonna use white and yellow paint to represent the little suction cups that would be on the bottom of the octopus's legs. So I have to go through on each leg and kind of decide, do I see the bottom of that leg, or am I just seeing the top of that leg? So am I just gonna see the patterns on the skin, or am I gonna see a few suction cups? It's gonna just depend on your imagination and in your own mind. How do you see each of the legs? Do you kind of see part of the bottom or not? So actually this is looking pretty good with just white, so maybe I might just use white paint for the suction cups, and then I'll use the yellow and the purple for the patterns. So I feel like I can see a few of the suction cups that would be on the bottom of this leg. And I've kind of done this without even thinking about it, but the dots would be like kind of a little bit bigger up here, and then as you get down here to the tip, it would just be like teeny tiny little dots, because the suction cups would get a little bit smaller as the leg gets thinner. So if you can manage it, it's kind of a little difficult just because it's so small and detailed, but you can try to make your dots a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller depending on what part of the leg you're painting. I think I'm just gonna say that this one is all just the front, and maybe you can see a little bit of the bottom of this one. Maybe you can just see a little bit of the bottom of this one. Maybe you can't see. I think this one's gonna be another one where you can just see the top. Maybe this one too. So I think the only other one I need to put suction cups is gonna be this one right here, like, cause it looks like it's kind of like curling around a little bit. Well, that looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and rinse my brush so that I have a clean brush, dry it off a little bit with my paper towel. And I'm gonna start using the purple and the yellow to make a pattern on the skin. So the pattern that's gonna go on the skin is gonna be for the head and for the legs. So you can kind of just start experimenting with circles and see how that looks on your octopus. And you can have some of those circles that are gonna kind of like go off the edge of the leg. So you don't have, actually probably would look not that good if you had all of them just kind of lined up like I have here, like if they just go straight down. because then it'll kind of look like the suction cups, and that's kind of not really what we're looking for. We're looking for more of like a skin pattern. So I'm trying to make it look like some of these circles are kind of going off the edge of the leg here, so that it looks like the pattern continues around and around the leg. So you can go ahead and experiment with those circles. So I'm gonna do purple circles on all the legs and the head, and then I'll show you what I wanna do with the yellow. Okay, now that it looks like my octopus is covered in purple Cheerios, I am going to go ahead and add some yellow and maybe a little white into the inside of each of the circles. Try to start with the ones that are looking like they're already kind of dry. And I'm just taking my paintbrush and putting a little dot of yellow inside. And if it doesn't fill up the entire center of the circle, that's okay. We're gonna see what it looks like if we add a little bit of white to it. And also if you see a little bit of the red that's showing through, that's fine also. So I'm gonna add a yellow dot to all of my circles. Now I'm going to go back through and find some of the circles that I want to add a little bit of white to. And I'm going to be doing something very similar where I'm just putting a little white in with the yellow. So I'm not going to pick every single circle to add some white to. I'm just going to kind of pick and choose a few where I think I want to add either a little bit of white beside the yellow or maybe on top of the yellow, just to kind of give it a little bit more dimension and make it look like these spots are kind of, I don't know, a little bit more real. All right, I think I'm ready to work on the eye. So for the eye, the inside of the eye for the pupil is gonna be black. So I'm gonna try to do just the very inside here as some black paint. And then around the pupil is gonna be white. So I'm just gonna leave a little bit of an area of white around where I put the black. And then I made up a little bit of a light green here for around the outside of the eye. So I'm gonna go right around, basically just tracing right where I have where the red stops. And I'm gonna use green to kind of outline that. Okay, so you can do the eye whatever color you want, but I wouldn't use the colors that you used for your polka dots, because if you use the same colors as your polka dots, then your eyes are just gonna blend in. So that's why I used the green to kind of make it look separate from the polka dots, because it's like a similar shape. All right, now I think we're ready to go ahead and start working on the background. To make it look like the ocean, I'm going to use a couple of different colors of blue, and I might even blend in a little bit of white also. I might also just let some of the white from the paper kind of show through. I don't think I'm going to paint it like a solid blue. So we're also going to want to use like a larger brush so that it, so you can spread out the paint really quickly, so you spread more of the area will get covered more quickly if you have a larger brush. So let's go ahead and start working on the background. The most difficult part about working on the background is making sure that you don't paint over what you already have. So when we're painting into like the little tiny areas here, we're probably gonna need to go back to a smaller brush. But for right now, we'll just see how it looks with the larger brush. So I'm just gonna go kind of in and around the background, and I don't, like I said, I don't wanna fill in the whole thing solid blue. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of blend my two blues together. So I'm going to be going back and forth between the two and just going around my octopus. So because we left some of the white behind the blue paint, the white paper show through a little bit, or some areas where I added a little bit of white paint on top of the blue, because we did that and we have those little areas where white is peeking out, that is why it is okay that there's a little bit of white peeking out around the outline of the octopus. If you painted your background solid blue and you don't have these little areas of white, then it's gonna look a little awkward that you might have these white spaces here right beside where the water and the octopus are. On mine, it really doesn't really show up that much because of the technique that I use where I let a little bit of white show through. But if you did paint it solid blue, then you're gonna need to make sure that you take a smaller paintbrush and get your blue and trace around your octopus, and you're gonna have to get right up beside the red paint so that you don't have these white bits that are showing through on mine. But I kind of like the technique that I use, so I'm just gonna let mine like this. So hopefully you were able to complete your octopus painting, and I hope you had fun with this project. I know I did. Painting is one of my favorite things to do. So if you get a chance to paint an octopus, make sure you take a picture of it and post it on Schoology for me so I can see. And this week is going to be Sea Creature Week, so stay tuned later this week for another video with a different sea creature, which I will let you know is going to be a shark. So stay tuned later this week for a shark project.